Let's talk about electricity. You think you know what it is, don't you? You use it constantly. Right now, electrons are flowing through the device you're reading this on. Electricity powers the lights around you, keeps your food cold, charges your devices. It's everywhere. So you must understand it, right? Okay, explain it to me. What actually happens when you plug something in? Where does the power really come from? What is electricity at its core? Most people give vague answers. It's energy, it's electrons moving. It's current in a wire. But those answers don't explain anything. They just rename the mystery. Sure, electrons are moving, but why? What's pushing them? And why does that pushing suddenly become light, heat, or motion? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Electricity is far stranger than we're taught. Deeply, profoundly strange. And the way we explain it hides that weirdness completely. We make it sound ordinary, predictable, safe. But once you see what's really happening, once you peek behind the curtain, you realize we're manipulating something extraordinary, something that quietly breaks almost everything you think you know about. How the world works. Let me show you. Try a simple experiment. Take a piece of plastic wrap, tear off a strip, rub it between your hands quickly, like you're trying to warm them up. Now hold it near the back of your hand. Don't touch. Notice what happens. The hairs on your arm rise. They stretch toward the plastic. You can feel it pulling on you through empty air. Stop and think about that. You rub plastic, no batteries, no wires, no power source, just friction. And now that plastic can reach across space and tug on your body. How? In your everyday experience, forces require contact. You push a chair, you touch it. You lift a book, you touch it. But here's a piece of plastic not touching you, yet pulling on you anyway. Most people shrug. Static electricity, middle school stuff. Not important. Not important? You're looking at the force that holds every atom in your body together, the force. That makes chemistry possible. The force that lets neurons fire, muscles contract. I see. You're witnessing one of the four fundamental forces of the universe acting across empty space. And you think it's a power trick. This is the problem. We're so familiar with electricity that we've forgotten how insane it really is. Let's break down what just happened. When you rubbed that plastic, you scraped electrons off your hands and piled them onto it, just a few trillion extra electrons. That sounds like a lot, but compared to the number already there, it's almost nothing. And here's the part that should break your intuition. Those excess electrons hate each other. They repel one another with a force so strong it's hard to even put into words. Take two electrons and place them just 1 centimeter apart. The electromagnetic force between them is about 1,042 times stronger than the gravitational force between them. That's a 1 followed by 42 zeros. At that scale, gravity is irrelevant, meaningless. For electrons, electromagnetic forces are everything. So here's the obvious question. If these forces are that monstrously strong, why isn't everything exploding? Why doesn't matter tear itself apart? The answer is almost magical: cancellation. Think about an atom. At the center, you have protons with positive charge. Surrounding them are electrons with negative charge. Positive and negative, plus and minus. They follow one simple rule, like repels like. Opposites attract. The forces are equal in strength. Repulsion is matched perfectly by attraction. In normal matter, positive and negative charges are packed together as closely as physics allows. Every positive charge is surrounded by negatives. Every negative by positives. The forces don't disappear, they cancel. Those immense electromagnetic forces are still there, acting constantly. They're just balanced so precisely that the net effect is zero. And because those forces are so enormous even, the tiniest imbalance matters. When you rub that plastic, you moved maybe 1 electron out of a trillion. Practically nothing. Yet it was enough to lift the hairs on your arm. Because when the underlying forces are that powerful, even a microscopic excess becomes visible, this changes how you should think about matter itself. Pick up a mug, hold it in your hand. What are you actually feeling? You think you're feeling the solidity of ceramic. You're not. You're feeling electromagnetic repulsion. The electrons in your hand are pushing away from the electrons in the mug with tremendous force. That's why your hand doesn't pass through it. The electrons refuse to overlap. Your hand never truly touches the mug. There is always a tiny gap between the atoms in your hand and the atoms in the mug. What you experience as touch is electrons pushing back through empty space. And here's the idea that should permanently alter how you see reality. Every force you've ever felt, every push, pull, pressure, or resistance is electromagnetic. You have never touched anything in your entire life. Every sensation of contact is electrons repelling electrons across space. The same force you saw with the plastic wrap, just acting at much smaller distance, where it becomes overwhelming. Now let's talk about wires. You have a copper wire running through your house. At one end, outlet. At the other, a lamp. You flip the switch. The lamp lights up instantly. What just happened? The usual explanation is that electricity flows like water. Electrons enter the wire, travel down its length, and come out the other end. That's wrong. Electrons in a wire drift incredibly slowly, about 1 millimeter per second. At that speed, it would take nearly half an hour for an electron to cross your house. Yet a lamp turns on immediately. So what's really happening? The wire is already full of electrons. Copper has a sea of free electrons waiting to move. When you flip the switch, you create a voltage difference, a push. That push acts on the electrons near the switch. But electrons repel each other, so that push is transmitted instantly from one electron to the next. Imagine a line of people standing shoulder to shoulder. Push the first person, and the last person feels it immediately, not because the first walked down the line, but because the force traveled through the crowd. That's electricity. The signal moves through the wire at nearly the speed of light, not because electrons are racing along, but because electromagnetic forces act across distance. Now trace that push backward. Your lamp connects to an outlet. The outlet connects to wires in your walls. Those connect to power lines, and those lead to a power plant, maybe miles away. At that power plant, something massive is spinning. A turbine weighing tons, rotating thousands of times per minute. That spinning motion happening far away is what powers your lamp. How? Magnetism. Electricity and magnetism aren't separate things. They're two faces of the same force, the electromagnetic force. moving electric charges create magnetic fields. Changing magnetic fields create electric currents. They're inseparable. In a generator, copper wire is spun through a magnetic field. The field pushes on the electrons in the wire. The electrons resist, but the field wins. They move. That movement is electric current. Run the process backward. Push current through a wire in a magnetic field, and the wire moves. That's a motor. Generators turn motion into electricity. Motors turn electricity into motion. Same phenomenon, different direction. This should sound impossible. You're telling me spinning. Metal in one place makes metal move somewhere else, connected only by thin wire. Yes, water falls on one side of a dam. Turbines spin. Electrons are pushed. That push races through hundreds of miles of wire at near light speed. It reaches your house. A motor turns. Your fan starts spinning. Water falling in one place makes motion happen somewhere else connected by nothing. But copper, that's insane. And it gets stranger. You don't even need physical connection. Run current through a coil of wire. It creates a magnetic field. Move that coil near another coil, and the changing field pushes electrons in the second one. No contact, no wires between them. That's a transformer. That's the power grid. Metal communicating with metal through empty space using electromagnetic fields. Now here's the idea that changes everything. Earlier, I said all the forces you feel are electromagnetic. Every push, every pull, every sensation of contact. That means the forces you think of as normal. Mechanical forces, solid matter, resistance aren't fundamental at all. There are consequences. Electromagnetism is the underlying reality, and we've barely scratched the surface. Everything else is derived from this force. When you push on a door, you're not applying some mysterious mechanical force. You're creating electromagnetic repulsion between the electrons in your hand and the electrons in the door. When you walk across the floor, you're not resting on solid matter. You're being held up by electromagnetic repulsion between electrons in your feet and electrons in the ground. When light enters your eyes, you're detecting oscillating electromagnetic fields that shake electrons in your retina. It's all electromagnetic. Chemistry is electromagnetic forces binding electrons to atoms. Heat is atoms vibrating because electromagnetic forces hold them in place. Biology is chemistry. Your thoughts, your memories, your senses, electromagnetic interactions. Your entire experience of reality is built on this one force. And here's the deepest, most unsettling part. You can't explain the electromagnetic force in terms of anything. Simpler. You can't say it's like a spring or a rope, because springs and ropes are made of electromagnetic forces. You can't reduce it further. It doesn't emerge from something else. Electromagnetism is fundamental. It's one of the four basic forces of nature. You have to accept it as a brute fact about reality, and then everything else gets explained in terms of it. That's uncomfortable, because electromagnetic forces act at a distance. They violate your intuition. You evolved to understand contact forces, pushes, pulls, collisions, but contact is an illusion. There is no contact. There are only electromagnetic forces acting across tiny distances. To understand electricity really, understand it, you have to rebuild your intuition from the ground up. You have to accept that the universe is made of fields that fill all of space, that charged particles push and pull on each other through those fields. That action at a distance is the rule, not the exception. Now let's revisit something familiar. You flip a light switch. Here's what actually happens. You close a circuit. Electrons everywhere in that circuit begin drifting slowly, about a millimeter per second. At the power plant, a turbine spins. Magnets rotate near copper coils. The changing magnetic field pushes electrons. Those electrons push on neighboring electrons. That push propagates through hundreds of miles of wire at nearly the speed of light. The push reaches your house. Electrons flow through the thin filament in the bulb. The filament resists. It's difficult for electrons to squeeze through. That resistance turns motion into heat. The filament gets so hot it glows white. Electromagnetic waves radiate outward. Some of those waves hit your eyes. The oscillating electromagnetic fields shake electrons in your retina. Those moving electrons are chemical reactions. Signals race through your neurons to your brain, and you see light. Every step is electromagnetic. The turbine spins because of electromagnetic forces. The signal travels because of electromagnetic repulsion. The resistance is electromagnetic. The light is electromagnetic waves. Your vision is electromagnetic. Now step back and appreciate how extraordinary this is. 200 years ago, none of this existed. Then we discovered these forces. We learned their rules. We figured out how to manipulate them. We built machines that could generate electricity, transmit it across vast distances, and convert it into useful work. And in doing so, we transformed human civilization. Electricity gave us instant communication, telegraph, telephone, radio, television, the internet, all electromagnetic. It gave us artificial light cities that never sleep. It gave us motors machines that work without muscle. It gave us computation billions of tiny switches using electromagnetic forces to process information. Every aspect of modern life runs on electricity. And it all rests on a single insight. There exists a fundamental force that acts across distance. Learn to control it. And you can do things that would look like magic to anyone living 2 centuries ago. So what is electricity really? Electricity isn't a thing. It's not a substance or a fluid. Electricity is what we call it when we manipulate the electromagnetic force to do useful work, but more fundamental, ally. Electricity is proof that the world is not what it seems. The world appears mechanical, solid objects pushing directly against each other, but that's an illusion. The real world is fields and forces, particles pushing and pulling across empty space. When plastic attracts paper, you're watching the force that makes chemistry possible. When you turn on a light, you're commanding electromagnetic fields that permeate the universe. And once you truly understand that everything changes, you realize the world is electric. That solidity is an illusion. That matter is a delicate balance of repulsion and attraction. And you realize something even more remarkable. Humans figured this out. We discovered these invisible forces. We learned to control them. We built a civilization on top of them. That is one of the greatest triumphs of human intelligence. So the next time you flip a switch, remember you're not just turning on a light. You're manipulating fundamental forces. You're making electrons push each other across entire cities. You're converting motion into fields and fields back into motion. You're wielding nature itself. That's what electricity really is. Not a utility, not a convenience, a window into the fundamental nature of reality and proof that humans can understand and shape that reality. That's the real story of electricity. Not comfort, not familiarity, truth